Hey folks, welcome to today's video. As always, I'm trying to do something a little bit different. I'm not trying to just do gameplay commentaries. I'm not trying to just do skin showcases or whatever. I figured like when I came back to YouTube, I wanted my channel to have a specific reason, and I guess my specific reason is something pops into my head that I want to discuss. There's something I want to showcase, or maybe there's something I think you've missed. So everyone's always asking sort of, where are the Gears 5 maps? What happened to the Gears 5 maps? Why are they designed the way they are? I've had criticism in the way that I believe they do promote Lancer setups and Lancer basically heavy gameplay. A lot has changed, but still predominantly you could, I think, fairly argue that the maps in Gears 5 aren't quite to the sort of unattainable high levels of Gears 1, 2, and even some in 3. I think that's fair to say. So a lot of people, have rightly questioned, we've got no maps, where are the maps? And I figured I'd dig through some archives and try and figure out how the maps are made. All I could really find was an older dev blog. It features Liam and Node, who are no longer with us. They've left the team. And it features maybe some dated information, but it does feature a lot of information of how a map is built, and I figured I'd share it with you. I'll let the video play in its entirety because I don't want to speak over somebody whose job it is to really design this. I will just say that one thing I did note was the pathways that they made. Effectively, the pathways through the maps have to fit all kinds of creatures in. A Brumac, a helicopter spawn, all of these things need to have a pathway. Now, on older maps, such as canals, they block off these spawns. A Brumac doesn't spawn on canals, the helicopter doesn't spawn on canals. But obviously, when the team has built these things, they want to show them off and they want to showcase them. And also, it adds replayability. You know, the fact that you can get a Brumac one round and then not another does add to replayability. On canals, you basically end up with the same horde bosses every time, which affects replayability. So I understand fully why they want to design the maps to feature and be able to feature all of the creatures and all of the interesting things that the game has to offer. Meaning, when a gameplay designer is thinking of a map, he's got to think about quite a few things. He needs to think, how does this affect Horde? How does this affect arcade mode? Is this a good area to set up in Horde? Are there any good areas to set up in Horde? And he needs to think also, how does this work as a multiplayer map and a competitive map? So the designers and the developers have a really tough job, I think, doing that. And I've always wondered, why don't we have Horde separate maps and multiplayer maps? I would rather have 5 superb multiplayer maps and 5 superb Horde maps, or 1 big Horde map that is specifically designed for Horde with tons of replayability, tons of things you can alter, you can build, you can upgrade. You know, 1 really big Horde map that is designed specifically to give the user the best Horde experience. Maybe you're in a tower and you're defending waves and waves of Hordes coming at you up the tower, breaking in, you know, kind of like Call of Duty, board up the windows. Maybe you've got some sort of vehicles outside I think they're called APCs. There's a lot of stuff you could do with Horde as a pure sort of tower defense. I'm not saying tower defense, but that kind of siege and holder position I've always found interesting. And I've always just thought that Gears has like fantastic Horde mode and PvE modes and a great multiplayer, and it's always a shame to see the maps have to work for both because it ends up a bit wishy-washy. It's okay for Horde, it's okay for multiplayer. And watching it, I found it interesting and I thought I'd share it. That's really all I had to say, was just, it would be awesome if I think we had separate maps for separate modes. I know the devs want to see all the content in all of the modes because people will be frustrated. I don't play Horde. You've built 3 Horde maps you've built 3 Horde maps and not 3 multiplayer maps. Whereas if it's a map for everything, everybody's happy. But again, it's that wishy-washy, maybe everybody's happy, but it's not ideal. I just thought, continuing with the theme of showing some stuff off that maybe some people haven't seen before, here is a little VOD from a much older dev stream, so the gameplay and stuff has changed obviously since then, but it was still relevant. So as always, if you do enjoy my content, as you can see below, this is kind of my overlay for Twitch. We're currently at 29 subscribers. We're currently about 23 followers away from 2,000. I do have a content goal. I didn't reach last month's content goal, not even close. So do let me know sort of what was lacking maybe in last month's content, because I do want to improve and try hit that goal again, because that's a goal that motivates me to keep going. So if you do enjoy the content and you do want to support, the best ways are to support the content goal. Basically, normally it's sort of £100 should I say, to do a month's content, which I think is pretty fair and reasonable, all things considered. I obviously have a sub goal on Twitch, and I have a follower goal, and I try to stream and play and make as much videos as time and myself allows. So thanks for watching. I will roll the clip now. Have a good one.
Everybody, and welcome to another Gears Weekly Developer Stream. Sorry to keep you waiting with no countdown there. We were just sorting a few issues. Just a heads up actually on those issues. If you hear any static pops or anything during the stream today, we apologize. We have some kind of construction going on in the studio. We're doing some renovation, and so it might interfere with our mics. We're hoping it'll be fine, but we'll be keeping an ear out. But thank you for joining us. If you haven't joined us before, welcome. We do this every single week. We're here at the Coalition in Vancouver, BC. And this week we're doing something a little bit special. I don't think we've done this for like a year and a half, a long time now. But if you were with us about a year and a half ago, we actually did a kind of special stream where we deconstructed a map from its first iteration all the way to its final submission. And we're actually going to do that today with District, which is a map you played in the Gears 5 tech test. Now, before I introduce everybody, I just want to also say, if you've seen the Road to Gears 5 challenges today, we have some brand new challenges to go do across Gears 4 and the Legacy games. There is a known issue with the tracking on the website for the one that requires you to go get an achievement in 6 Gears games. Please know we're working on that. If you get the Gilded Weapon skins in Gears 4, you have them in 5. So don't worry about what the website said or says. We're getting that resolved, and until that's resolved, you can use that as your kind of metric to know you've got it. So we'll get straight into the stream now. So first off, we should probably introduce everybody. Obviously on the far left, we have the man himself, Mr. No Zero, Ryan Cleveland, Multiplayer Design Director at the Coalition.
Hey everybody.
And do you want to say a quick hello and introduce everyone to who you are?
Hey everyone, I'm Garrett Metcalf. I'm a multiplayer level designer here at the Coalition.
So Garrett, obviously the map today we're going to look at District was your map, right?
Yeah.
So you want to, before we kind of show you, what we're going to do is we're going to take you into the editor and we're actually going to show you a bunch of the iteration process. Is there anything you want to say firstly about like what you were trying to achieve with District and kind of what the ethos was when you were going into designing the map?
Yeah, like for sure. So like one thing I wanted to do with District, and I'm sure all of you who were involved in the tech test truly know like the juice bar and info center. So like like for this map, I wanted to like create some powerful positions that were off center line that kind of just acted as like a kind of powerful position that overlapped with the key fights along the center line. So I wanted to play as something that players want to hold, and they're kind of more important to hold than the center line power weapon positions.
Cool. So Ryan, when we're going into creating a map lineup, what kind of, like as a multiplayer design director, what are you kind of leading the teams to try and achieve across the lineup, and like how do you decide where those pieces are missing or need to be filled in the lineup?
With Gears 5, we really wanted to do something like that was kind of deeper, richer than what we did with Gears 4. With Gears 4, we made some really great maps. We were also at the same time learning how to make maps. So I think our team did a fantastic job. Garrett did a fantastic job. And the rest of the designers delivering on like, hey, this feels like a Gears map. But with Gears 5, we wanted to do something that was more about like what we wanted to do with maps overall, as opposed to trying to recreate sort of a feeling from the past. So we've created a lineup of maps that we think brings a lot of distinct new ideas to Gears. District fills a spot that was trying to kind of merge these two worlds, where we've got some really unique new gameplay, but still had a very classic feel to it, like emotionally. However, like it almost could sort of sit in almost any Gears, like a very timeless feel, but still all the fights are really fresh and really new. And we wanted to make sure that it was playable in all of the modes, and that this particular map was really one of our leading competitive maps. So we wanted to make sure that right from the beginning that this map was really great for escalation, and from a thematic point of view, we always try to make sure that each of the maps has a very different hook, something that sets it apart from everything else. So I believe we started with like simply the idea of an intersection, like of just like a cars in an intersection, and that was pretty much where everything started.
Cool. Well, speaking of where things started, do you guys want to start the process of taking us through the map and how it evolved over the days ahead?
For sure.
Chat will be watching the chat to try and get some of your questions in, like whilst these guys run through things. So fire away with any questions you have about District or the making of multiplayer maps, anything like that, and I'll try and put them in as they go through.
So we're gonna go way back here.
So this might look a little bit different from what people know, right?
So like what you guys are like seeing here is, this is me like getting a rough idea of this is me just trying to get ideas in my head of what I wanted to create. Like I knew I wanted to create like some kind of like street fight, like Ryan was saying earlier, like some kind of intersection with cars and stuff. So like this is my like very early on like idea of what I thought District would be, but clearly whoever's seen the map, it's not like this. It's just to get like my juices flowing, and it just gets me like, it just gets me intrigued by like just trying out new things and like fooling around in the editor.
How long, like when, from a time point of view, when was this like made? Like a year ago, year and a half?
Yeah, like this was made in November 2017.
Wow. So it's a year and a half
So,
ago.
like-
A year and a
almost.
half ago, yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk about like the duration of how long it took to get from this stage to the final block out of when I passed it on to the artist.
So when you do one of these initial like kind of sketches, what are the key things that you're looking for?
So like I have a few important like key design aspects when I'm first starting a map. It's about like lane structure, how the lanes connect with one another. Like, is there a straight centerline connection that runs through all the lanes? And it's about timing, like how fast can I get from one side to the map, as in like towards the corners of the maps, and what's the flow? Like player flow is always a big thing like in mine. And it's just the overall interaction of how each lane can interact with one another, like how fights can overlap with one another. There's a lot, like that's like kind of the high level of like what I always keep in mind when I'm designing a map, but there's so much more to it.
There seems to be a little bit of elevation going on here. Like,
Yeah.
was that something you wanted to play with?
Yeah, elevation was for sure something at the beginning that I wanted to play with, because I think we have some maps from Gears 4 that really show like great examples of it. You always have to keep visibility in mind, because I feel like visibility in Gears of War is like so important. You like, if you're an observant player, you should always know when you're getting flanked in Gears of War. But when you have those different elevations in Gears, you start to kind of almost break that rule. But if you do it in like an elegant way, like you can achieve it and still get all that visibility in. So it's hard to implement like overlapping and different elevations in Gears for sure.
So some people might think you just drop a couple cubes down and click play. like maybe we can show them just a little bit of the markup that has to go in.
As in,
Or just maybe move a
As
couple
in
objects
cover
around
art?
just to
Yeah,
show
yeah.
people how the blocks are made up,
so like,
and then show them the cover links.
so like all these, like they have like player collision and bullet collision, so it's very simple, right? I have like a library of shapes. I have cylinders and like all the different types of shapes, so I can make things, right? Like these are just my like very block out like houses that I just kind of use as like the outer bound walls and stuff like that. So like sometimes I'll bring in meshes like from the actual like art asset library and stuff, just to kind of give it more of a landmark feel, so kind of differentiate the areas. But then these are like the cover links. So like all these like red slots, like these are what controls like what your player is sliding into. So like all these little yellow dots here, these are like what controls your pop-up when you hit L trigger. When you're in low cover here, you obviously do a pop-up.
Can you like pull out and show show all of them?
Yeah, I'll show it.
There you go.
So like this is like still, this was like very rough, right? You can even see my bridge used to be right here, but I just didn't even move them over. So this is me just trying out area, trying to get my lane structure like together and how all the fights will connect with one another and all the lanes. But like obviously these control the mantles. So like I just can like easily slide these over and stuff like that. Like if I move this right here, see it breaks my mantle. So it's just like, it's a lot of going through and making sure all your cover is like nice and clean for gameplay when we play test these down in the playtest lab. All these like control like swats, like they'll always know if they're in the right metric, they'll always know they can swat to one another. Like see when I start moving this away, it's like, oh, that's too far, like it breaks the swat. So like it's actually like a very like smart system. Like it's very easy to use, to be honest. It's just time consuming setting up all these. Like this is probably my most tedious task after I get my block out.
It's also one of the most valuable to a player.
Yeah.
When it's done right, everything feels natural.
Yeah,
and when
like,
it's done wrong,
Well, throughout the process, there's a lot of tuning that goes into those cover nodes as well, right, from a feel perspective.
Yeah,
as well.
I may say it's like tedious, but it's actually one of the most important things and things I really take pride in, like making sure like everything's just crisp and like pristine, how it lines up with the cover, you know, because gameplays obviously and how my levels play and how it feels to take cover and shoot around cover in all my levels is very important.
So how did this one feel to play?
Well, this one, I don't even know. No one even got to see this except me. I would never let someone play this.
Well, that's the question I was going to have for you is like, so you spent all this time building this space, like what kind of makes you go, yeah, I want to get this into people's hands, or no, I just don't feel like this is something I want to do, scrap it, rethink about, like like come up with a new approach?
So like I would maybe like come up with rough ideas like this. I'd get like my coworkers, like Michael Shannon and Ty Buser and Ryan, we'd kind of all sit around like behind, and everyone be like behind my shoulder as I'm kind of showing things, and then we kind of like, if like we see something that's like ambitious or something that's interesting looking, like we kind of go off that one area, that one fight, and then we kind of build around that. Right. And like in the playtest, we make sure like once we have one thing working, and that doesn't mean once it's working, it's done. It's by far never done until the very end. But it's like we find something that's working, we figure out that it's working in playtest, and then we kind of start redesigning like every other area of the map. And then once that area is working, like you never try and fix everything and try and make everything perfect at once. Like I used to do that like in Gears 4, like you have to kind of break like perfectionism. Like you have to break habits, because you can't manage and design a whole map together. You just got to make sure you're just doing one section at a time, and eventually it all starts clicking.
In these early stages, what we don't do is try to necessarily like smooth off all the rough edges. What we're doing is looking for something interesting and something good.
Like essence, right?
Yeah, we're looking for an idea to build off of, and like maybe we should move on to the next one when we found it.
So like here you can kind of see district, but like not really, right? So like I kind of went back to the drawing board. Like we all looked at this and we're like, okay, we don't really see something like too inspiring. I wasn't that inspired too by that last level we were looking at. So here I was like, okay, like you can kind of start to see like my inspiration of like making a cul-de-sac street fight, and then you can kind of just see like rough shapes of like the theater cinema here, like kind of coming together. Obviously, like this was just to really get like the structure of like my lanes again. Like I'm still trying to figure out like how I want it all to connect. Obviously, like this area is very different than district. I knew I wanted, like this was the big inspiration of the map now. Like I knew I wanted to create something that revolved around this big cul-de-sac open street fight, but I still was unsure of like what I wanted to do on this side. I kind of took what was over here and kind of just iterated on that. I was still unsure, and And that's fine when you're like designing a level in my mind. Like as long as like you have one vision of one area of a fight, like you can always come back and like redesign that later, right? Like just keep on focusing on like what you're truly inspired by and what you want the map to really revolve around, and then you just go. You just.
So how did you change the back?
This area?
Yeah.
So it's not like these are still rough prototypes and stuff like that. So like here's the next one. It's kind of like I started kind of get more of the like the lane and structure and negative space to kind of separate the lanes. But like as you can see here, like this hasn't really changed. I may have been quite positive that this was gonna work, but like I don't think it was, or it did actually. So, and then so like after this, like it probably took me like 2 weeks to get to this next stage. So this is like the very first version of District that I got the team to play.
So now there's a lot more recognizable features in terms of the
Yeah.
lanes, and
Well, like
still very different.
Like
but
obviously this, I brought this side in because I still didn't know. Like I still wasn't like, I didn't have true passion for this side yet. So I'm just kind of letting it sit for a while. Like I know when we go play it, like it'll play like decently. Like
I actually remember
it's not
playing this one.
It's not too complex, you know. It makes sense when you look at it. So I kind of moved on, but as you come over here, like this is like where I was really inspired still. Like so I put a lot more effort into this side because I had a vision here. So like as you can see here, like these houses, like which is a fish market, and the other side's what is it? It's an apple market.
Yeah, it was so,
It's an apple market. So like it's obviously like now it's a juice bar and a info center, but they changed a lot, right? And obviously they changed rotationally, right? Like the rotations like truly changed. The whole interior changed.
I got a question for you, by the way. What was the name of the map at this point in the design?
This was Settlement.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that in Gears 4 development, I had a map that was called District, and it was actually two houses that looked across from one another.
No way! I
fought.
never knew that.
But so I wanted to call this District, but it's weird when we start calling maps names that we used to call names. People like, I don't know. You kind of get trolled for it.
Yeah.
You kind of get trolled for it. So yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying. Someone asked, "Is this stuff like this in the retrospective book?" Retrospective is more looking back on the franchise as a whole. By the way, it doesn't really go into this level of detail, but there is some really insightful stuff in there. It's definitely worth it if you want to see how Gears was kind of like the inception of Gears and when the Locusts were the Geist and stuff like that. It's really interesting.
So like, yeah, now in the actual map, like this is like ATM. This is like Pergola over here. Like obviously far from what like the final version is.
Mm-hmm.
You can start to somewhat see like the theater design here.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, so like I knew I had something here once we first played it. Like people were like, yeah, it's really cool and stuff. Like people enjoyed it, but like I knew there was a lot more work to do. So then, I'll just show you guys actually just quickly, just like what it really looks like from a game developer view when like I have a lot more things to manage when I'm out of game mode. When I'm out of game mode, it kind of shows me all the tools that I need to actually make the game function within my level. So like these are like weapon pickup factories. So like right here, I can set it to like drop shot. Once it loads. So like I have a big library here of weapons and stuff I can choose. And I can make them like switch per round like in King of the Hill and TDM and stuff. So everything's like very intuitive. Like UE4 is like an amazing engine. Like we have a great tools team and engineer team that kind of gives us the best tools that we need to like make our job as easy as possible.
Show we'll do that later on the fully arted one.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Whilst we're here, actually, there was a relevant question that will probably come up throughout this, and I think people will be really interested in. So how do you choose weapon places? Like you've got this first iteration down, you're about to put it in place. How do you make decisions about what weapons go down?
Like early, like what those are always changing, to be honest. Like sometimes we find one that clicks, and then we're like, okay, like a drop shot for sure, like caters this area. It's a great counter for that high elevated place.
Yeah.
But like sometimes it changes. Like at the beginning, we just try and think like, what are the relationships between all the power weapons and how the secondary side weapons kind of interact with the other sides of the maps and vice versa. So
Because we started the game with escalation, it really changed the way we look at power weapons. So instead of it being just forever, this weapon will be at this location, we wanted to make sure that all locations had interesting uses of different power weapons, so that it wasn't just this spot is defined forever by this particular power weapon.
So yeah, that was iteration 1. This was iteration 2. This is like the change I did 10 iterations later. So like, it's probably like 2 weeks in between since the first one or so.
And this doesn't even count the ones that you did
So
that you
yeah.
threw away.
So just to be clear, like there's so much other stuff changing and not as much as this changing all in one iteration.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like, oh, I changed this, then we played it, and then it just kind of, it's
You're
a big
showing, like,
cycle like that.
milestones,
Yeah,
right?
I'm showing like the true evolution of District coming together and what it is today
Yeah.
Through big changes.
through big
Well, I
changes.
mean, there's
yeah,
a big
yeah.
change down the bottom, especially, which I think is
Yeah.
going to be like, what's going on here?
So like obviously this area is like that area that I still had no idea what I wanted to do. Like this used to be that big tower still. I knew I wasn't super passionate about it, so I'm like, okay, like I know the other side's clicking, like, and I know I have to go back to it, to like the cinema side, but I really need to get this part nailed down. So like I didn't even know what I was doing here, to be honest. And that's okay though, that's okay. Like you just have to keep trying things, right? Because if you're not failing, like you'll never, like everything that's made that is successful will never be made. Like it's like all the maps that the whole team has created, like there's so many maps that I've thrown out that I've spent 3 months working on, right? And it's like okay, it's time to put this off to the side and start something fresh and new. And then like some of our best maps are created from putting ones to the side and
Well,
failing.
also throughout this process, we have a multiplayer level design team playing it, right? And you're getting feedback from them as well, like even
Yeah.
as early as this point, right?
Yeah.
So
Like here you can start to see like District actually come together. You're seeing some traits like here's the doors
Yeah.
to arcade, but you can literally go in arcade here and vice versa, the hotel over there. Obviously everything's symmetrical.
These houses, like, they cause no end of problems. So like, how is it, like, what does it look like when, like, the feedback that you get when you play?
The feedback, it's usually like 90% negative and 10% positive. So like,
Can you give an example of like?
yeah,
what-
like well, people just areas can be too hard to attack, and counter areas can be too hard to flank. People can't see like from one side to the map. People don't know where combat is, like combat awareness. People always want to know where people are so they can move around the map quickly and get into those combat spaces. There's a lot that comes in, but like, and it's usually always negative, but which is not a bad thing. I think it just makes you a
It's
bit.
constructive.
Yeah, it's all constructive, but there's always positive stuff that come out of the feedback. So as I'm getting feedback after we play, I just kind of write down the pros and cons, what people forwarded to me, and then I kind of go back to my desk and I filter out what I believe in from what all those points everyone said, right?
Yeah.
So like I believe like on these cons, I need to act on these. These are the most important I need to act on before we play the map again. And then the pros I kind of just leave. I may like spice it up a little bit because there's something I wanted to keep like improve on in those areas. But yeah, so that's pretty. That's
you can
pretty
really
much our
start to see
feedback.
it as well in this iteration. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much you can just kind of go, oh, that looks kind of similar to.
So the hoses came in. They rotated obviously from the last iteration. So the thing is though, the doors are like way over on the right side when literally like they're over here in the final version, right? As you come in, like the windows and the doors are all misaligned. They're all different sides. The curved windows actually like reversed. It's inverted. So I forget why I wanted to do this too. I don't know. I think I wanted.
You wanted them looking over.
Yeah. So and then I had a door over here that connected to the cinema. And like the reason, I guess I'll get into it once it's closed off and why I closed it off when we get to the next iteration maybe. Because I think it's closed off.
The other thing is people were safe underneath like when it was curved like this because it's the same shape as the circle.
I did want to like create more like something to hold here actually with the car and the little fish thingy. The cinema got like a little, it actually almost, it starts to kind of get to like where it is. You can kind of see it. There's kind of more elevations, different elevations though, but kind of the pillars that run along the back and whatnot. Got your little like nook here. This cul-de-sac, like once I hit this, like this thing never changed for a long time. And it's obviously still in like the final version, so the middle.
Someone asked, when the testers are playing at the map at this point, are the character models in a similar early state? Were there Gears 4 character models used or just generic models? It's pretty much still Gears 4 models at this point, right?
This would have been when?
2017, so it's probably like...
It'll vary, like they work on very different timelines, so it'll depend on where the map is in development. We use the latest version of whatever characters are there, so when we start, it'll be the previous game's characters, but then as soon as the character team has like the new like hero characters, we'll use them right away because we want to make sure that they all work with what we're doing and that everything looks good. Yeah.
And then this is when the houses had stairs. I just want to bring these up because it's been a controversial thing of these step-ups within District, and I'll get to that later, why they are step-ups and why we truly believe step-ups are very important. They play an important role in these houses. I'll go to the next one.
You'll notice there's no blocks behind the...
Yeah, no blocks behind the doors. The two covers that people kind of use as their defensive position.
Well, in general, the houses are a lot bigger, even metric-wise, aren't they, right now?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
There's a second room.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the next one. So here, I kind of like...
Which iteration is this one?
This was, this is 24. So we went to 1 to 11, and this is 24. So here you can kind of, like I'll show you, like here I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. Like this is obviously nothing like the old one. I think it's more defined than the last iteration though. I was kind of inspired by Mercy's kind of like balcony here. I just wanted to do some kind of defensive position that kind of interacts with the street down here. Obviously with the torque bow, so like when people are fighting over the street, like this guy, whoever wins this fight could obviously interfere with the torque bow at the street. The funny thing is though, is like this is pretty much still true now to the final. So like this is like the first step of this area getting close to like what's in the final stages of District.
I think we really liked, from memory, like this fight started to emerge, like the shotgun fight down here. Started to emerge as a really like kind of like a little kernel of something that was working really well.
I was just going to remember we really did like the torque and everything and how it interacted with that lane, but it was just quite powerful. I just seem to remember when we were playing, because I remember having a lot of fights around that top block.
Yeah, and then
but I think people like the ethos of it.
Yeah. The planters started to come in. It's clearly like it's not identical to final. Like these aren't here in final, and you can obviously shoot over these. It's kind of more like that in final.
We'll get to those.
Yeah. But the now the doors have closed off. This is still like reversed, the window. I still don't have these covers here.
Are the steps in this one still?
And obviously this door moves over quite a bit. Yeah, the steps are still here. This door like kind of is now true. Like this kind of area all right here is kind of true to what it is still today.
So why did you close off the interior here?
Close off the interior because it was just too porous. And what I mean by porous is like I said, like my big inspiration was trying to make these very important like off center line positions that play an important role to hold. It's something that we don't really did in Gears 4. This was like what was driving. So like what I noticed was when this door was open before in the old iterations. It was really hard for your own team to hold these houses. Like people were just flying in and flanking constantly. It caused a very fast gameplay flow, and it was just very hard to manage where players were and everything. So your front, and that causes like all these fronts to not pop because people are just so free and they can go anywhere, right? So that's like, it kind of interferes with all your cover gameplay, and obviously cover gameplay is like the most important thing in Gears.
Right, there's a lot of player psychology that goes on in map design, right? And about feeling of safety or feeling an area is high risk is as valid as if it is high risk, right?
Well, yeah, like, I mean, whenever people are playing a game, like how they're perceiving things will impact their judgment. But what we try to do is to make things as readable as we can, so that people aren't, like, the real meaning behind an area isn't hidden, right? So that when you look at it, one of the things about Gears design philosophy is to have a really chunky, obvious, like, gameplay read to it. That's why we make our cover so clear. It's not because we literally can't make art that's like all, you know, flowing and detailed. It's because we want the player to be able to understand exactly where these positions are. So being out in the open is never good in Gears, right? So that playing with that space compression will change the risk reward. And obviously what you want is like a piece of cheese on the other side to say, okay, if you run across this thing, you're going to be rewarded with either a strong position or a power weapon.
So this was like a big change too now. Like, remember on the old one, it was a big street open here where this home hill was. So I knew I kind of needed to start developing this area now that connected to the cinema. So you can start to see similarity between this and the final version. Obviously not this nook and stuff, but this overall stair and just the overall flow of how it comes in. Like, these are obviously reversed, and the door's actually here, and this cover is actually here.
So why did you reverse them?
So I reversed them because it just hurt player flow. Like, when you're coming out of spawn, like, a very important thing is like how you guide players and how the slips feel from cover to cover. So obviously here, it was kind of a lot harder to get to this door after cover slips. It's a lot more awkward angles to run and slip off of. While here, and obviously this position of this cover wasn't final, but it's a lot more easier to slip off that and then slip off here.
And if you go outside and look at it the other direction, the two doors were really close together.
Yeah.
So like moving it made the run a little longer.
Oh, right, yeah. So the flank between like this door and this door was like very fast when it was over here, yeah. So it kind of just slowed that down. But this is all different too, right? Like, I connected the pergola and ATM to the back hallway of the cinema. And like, once again, I'll get into it later, but like, we came into like things still being porous. Like players could be like all hiding in all these areas. So when people are coming out of spawn, like, it's really hard for them to grasp like where everyone is. There's a lot going on here. There's just so many doors, and people can just like weave in and out, like figure eight through everything, and kind of just be really annoying.
So it made it really difficult to hold like the cinema area.
Yeah.
So I saw someone in chat saying this guy hates flanks. Do you want to like talk
I hate
about?
flanks?
Yeah, but that's what I was thinking. It's a good thing to talk about. So like, there's a balance, right? And do you want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about like what that gameplay balance is when it comes to flanking and the kind of spaces you build and what you allow and don't allow for?
Yeah,
Or
like,
encourage or don't encourage is probably.
well, like, flanks are super important. I always think about them in my designs, but like, I don't like to give, like, I personally, like, my levels kind of speak to it too, like Foundation and Harbor and stuff. Like, my flanks don't come easy in any of my maps. Like they should be a huge, like, to me, they should be more of a risk than a reward. Like I like the risk to be huge, but like, obviously there's a good reward if you're able to achieve them, but I like to make mine kind of long and lengthy a bit, but I feel like it's more rewarding when you do achieve my flanks. But
Yeah.
I think it's a mixture of high cover and where you like methodically place that high cover, where you can allow those players to kind of do their kind of hide and seek ninja on people and
Yeah.
get that breakthrough.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think a great example, like you said, is Harbor. that being at the front of the boat lets you put some seriously good flanking shots into people with a Lancer, but at the risk of having someone run up behind you and nash you in the back if you're not paying attention. So
If we make flanks that are too easy and that are too powerful, it creates like shallow gameplay because it means there's no choice to make. It's an obvious choice.
Yeah.
Do I take the super easy flank that gives me a really powerful like position on people? Well, of course. So that just means it becomes a tax, and there's no like thinking. It's just an automatic thing. Okay, I have to send somebody here. I always have to do this
Yeah.
thing. So we always want to make the reward proportional to the risk.
yeah.
All right, I'll go on to the next iteration. I think this was 3, right? Yeah.
Whew, it's
So
a big jump, 20 iteration jump.
Yeah, 24 to 44. So here you actually see the bandstand now. So I'm like, okay, like I lowered it down, right, from that mercy perch. So this is actually pretty true. Like at least this whole area here is pretty true to what it is today.
So why did you lower it down?
I lowered it down because I realized I just wanted this position not. You can still counter the street, which was my intentions of wanting this area to do, but I lowered it down because I just didn't want it to be the main focal point of the map. Like I said, remember in the early days, like this was my whole like how these houses reacted with like this whole area was like my true inspiration, and this is was my focal point of the map. And that's not to say like I don't care and like didn't put work into this area, because clearly I did. You guys have seen it evolve so drastically like over time, but I just wanted it to be somewhere where you can go and you can have some intimate shotgun fights, but at the end of the day, it usually flows over here.
And also, we got finally to an iteration where the steps are gone. So I think it's time to talk about step-ups and why you made that change.
I'll get there. But these are still here. I clearly am still trying to work all these secondary areas. Like there's a deeper pocket like beside here. And these just became like very campy and annoying like eventually, and they're unhealthy for gameplay.
Yeah, and you also would get stuck here, so you ended up with the fights that were so close to each other. Like there'd be people fighting in the center, people fighting right here, and they get choked up, and then the two would bang into each other.
Yeah. And then the houses. Oh yeah, so like this is when the houses start to get like almost like final to what they are today. So that's when these covers came in. I'll talk to why those came in, and the step up. So the covers came in, and Ryan actually brought this up the other day, because I kind of like, it's hard, like I'm designing like so many things in one map. It's really hard sometimes for me to look back and be like, wait, why did I put this specific piece of cover here? Because there's so many things going through my head when I'm going through every iteration of like things that I need to stick true to and what I believe in, and so I just don't know sometimes why I made decisions, why I did. So, but it's good because your teammates are there and they're kind of like, oh yeah, like this is why that was there. Because it could have actually been some feedback that they provided from a play test, and they actually know why these pieces of cover were placed there. So like these were placed here because when they were not here, you were just, for all the people like trying to be like the house player and defend your own house, you were always just getting angled out awkwardly, and you're just having awkward fights from like here to cinema and such like that. So it really started to make like these houses like obsolete, and you didn't really want to stay in them anymore. And once again, that's moving away from like my true vision of the map of like trying to make these houses like really pop and have an intimate relationship with all the key fights along the center line. So that was the reason for these. The reason for the step-ups is like once again, like it wasn't as porous anymore due to like me closing off this door over here, but it was just so fast still. Like you could get from one house to the other house when these were stairs, like in the snap of a finger. And what that caused too is like once an enemy team takes this house, like your own house, let's say this is your spawn over here, and this can obviously happen in the version today, but what the step up does is it puts so much more risk to like wanting to commit to that step up and take this enemy house. Because once the enemies take your house, like it has big impact on your spawn area. So that was just one thing. We wanted to like slow down the overall flow and just make it more of a high risk thing of, do you really want to like take this opponent's house?
And we wanted to separate the fights so that like the fights were from house to house, like layering over top of the fight in the center, and keep that center fight kind of cleaner. So you didn't have, we used to get these people coming out of the house and flying right into the center fight.
Yeah.
And then, like, because of the step ups, you don't get that quite as much.
It was just so fast. Like it wasn't, and then once these came in, like it truly like slowed it down. Like I know some people are suggesting after tech test to try stairs, and like trust me, we tried stairs from iteration 1 to 44, and like as a team of designers, like we truly feel these step ups are key to like what makes this whole like street and cinema like fights and how they interact together. Like it's kind of like a big key of like just kind of keeping everything slow at a slower pace, and like Ryan said, like having these overlapping fights that allow you to have your secluded shotgun fights in here, and then they kind of slowly blend over to like rifle fights across the street and whatnot.
And I think Garrett's also alluding to something, which is that the design team here does read a lot of the forums and does read a lot of the feedback on Twitter and takes a lot of the feedback very seriously. So I think like huge props to Garrett and Michael and Ty for going through all that stuff and trying to like use it to think about how to make the maps better. So it's not always easy, and I think that Garrett does a great job of processing it.
Oh, sorry, I just saw someone said, what does the slicer lance execution look like? Go check out our Twitter. We posted it today.
So here, it's like actually pretty close to what it is today. To cover up the stairs, this slip now to this door is like, it's just a lot better metrics than I guys showed you before. It's a lot cleaner flow to get out to the cinema fight. The door is obviously flipped.
Oh, so you've got the back closed off still at this point, right?
Back's closed off.
But also to
like
behind you as well, right?
Yeah, there's like old design back here. There's like, actually to show you guys funny things, like as a designer, we make things, we just come up with crazy ideas. And like, this is what Michael and I call it, like we call it like our graveyard, where we just kind of like pull down a bunch of designs that like, we aren't sure if they work or not, or we kind of have like this like kind of love relationship with them where we're not sure if we want to delete them fully because we might drag them back up and bring them back into the, like bring them back to life. So we kind of call it like the graveyard. Like, see, you can still see like this old area where I'm like, I don't know, do I want to get rid of it? Maybe it'll come back one day, but they never do.
That's not true. That's not true. Sometimes they do.
Like 10% chance. But yeah, so the street actually starts to get more defined and more relaxed. As you guys can see too, like if I go back and I show you like this is still one thing I'm still trying to learn, and I think all level designers still struggle with this, is just like, if you go back, like, it was kind of worse in Gears 4, but like, you start to, this is the first iteration that I'm showing you, but it's a lot more like messy, as in like, there's a lot of just free floating cover everywhere, and free floating cover is like not necessarily a bad thing, but it's, as you see, like, as the iterations go on, like look how much like less free floating cover there is now along the street here. Like everything's kind of just simplifying and like elegantly cleaning up, where like the map will still feel the same when you play it. Like players don't notice these things, but it's truly what makes like your cover pushes to cover pushes like that much more meaningful and stuff like that. And there's not just all these merry-go-round like around covers and whatnot. Like it just starts to really like mature.
Got people, so where some of these assets in the tech test under the map, or did you end up removing them? Should we just confirm everyone they're removed? They're not under the map in the final.
No,
Yeah,
the tech artist would never let those go in, because we got to make these things play at 60 FPS for all you guys. So like, it's hard to get these maps like to 60 FPS. So like, the tech artists are like, they're deleting everything they can get their hands on, like everything. Oh yeah, so 44, that's what I just showed.
Yeah.
But like again, you see like the whole street kind of
so
condensed. There's not like this long line of sight like across across the street here. Like there's no free floating cover and cars everywhere. Everything's actually structured.
Do you have a rough estimation of how long it was from 1 to where we are at this point, 44?
Like
We're
1 to
talking-
How
44.
much time?
Yeah.
Like, it's all, like, I don't know.
It's like months and months.
Oh,
right?
well, okay,
8 months?
so I'm about to get to like the last one, to the last iteration now. So you guys like kind of see like, obviously like the last thing that I'm really trying to figure out now is pretty much this area where the hotel and arcade is. Like everything else has actually like come together quite cleanly, and it's obviously like, oh yeah, I haven't showed the back cinema. The cinema still has a little work to do. There is like this one-way mantle here where people would camp and like people would come out of spawn and you just kill them. It just wasn't healthy at all. So I still had some work to do around here, but you do start to see it come together as well. There used to be a drop shot in this map. I don't even remember how that played. It was
What we ended up
probably-
playing is people would get their back, like it would be a little meat grinder in there as the people
Yeah.
would get shot in the back.
And then I think it just really impacted the people that wanted to play in here too. Yeah, okay. So then this is like the final version of Blockout. So this is where I knew I had to redevelop these areas. So I obviously blocked these doors off now, so you couldn't go into these buildings that you once were. And I kind of just wanted I just wanted to simplify it, right? I wanted people to come out of spawn and just kind of have the overall like offensive aggressive like position coming out, because I think that's just healthy for people when they're exiting like their spawn area of just having the upper hand. There's not really hiding corners like people once had in these rooms. So I just wanted to open it up and really make it just clean and simplified. That's like there's some like very small design changes that you might not have saw like from the last iterations, but everything starts to really come together. And this is pretty much like here's the cinema. I got rid of that wall. This is when this one-way drop down came in. Like
that was right at the end. That was the last thing we were working on.
in our blockouts, we tend to like just use these bright neon textures. You're
getting there.
Neon green.
I have like some weird speech like problems today.
Doing great.
But like we use them as one-way mantle, like just visualization for players, just so they know it's a one-way mantle. It's just something that we do, and it's something that we try and bring into the Arta versions too. Like we try and get Splash to maybe put like a tarp over a one-way mantle or some kind of scratches, something to just try and communicate to the player visually that it's a one-way mantle.
Yeah, and for the people that don't, like we've said this a few times, but we work with like a really strong studio in the UK called Splash Damage. And so you'll hear us say Splash every once in a while, and referring to the artists over at Splash that do the arting for all the multiplayer maps, and they do a fantastic job. So we'll get to what the final art looks like in a second.
Yeah. So yeah, this was like, so that was iteration 70. So that was, so I think I recorded it like down.
You can't open it up.
Yeah, I guess.
What
no,
happens
I
at
have
this
a
point, though?
document. I have a document though. That's
You still can't open up your file browser.
yeah.
What happens? So now, what happens? Like you've got an iteration that you're feeling pretty confident in. What's the next step in development? Like, where do you go from this point?
From this point, so
Yeah.
like we
Like internally and as a whole, not you necessarily as a designer.
Oh yeah, well I guess like we put it in a studio-wide playtest.
We call that validation, right?
Yeah, validation, and then it goes into studio-wide playtest, right?
Well, what we do is this is where we currently call it like iteration, and at the end, once we all kind of sign off on it, or once I sign off on it, then it goes into like Garrett said, our studio playtest, where we validate it against like all like people just playing it, like a ton of it.
Like
right?
everyone in the studio.
Everybody in the studio, right? So we'll run it in there for a while, and as long as we're getting sort of feedback that requires addressing, then Garrett will keep making changes based on what the studio is telling him.
But yeah, like I was saying before, like from iteration 1 to 70, it was like from November 27th to like April 5th or something.
It's about 4.5 months.
So like 4.5 months to get to like the first version of like the very like prototype areas towards this. So it takes a while. Like some maps go a little quicker, but the average is usually like 3 to 4 months or something
So Gears,
like that.
oddly, Gears 4 was about 3 months, and Gears 5 was about 4 months. And part of the reason, like someone's asked a question about how to make them, like you're starting with a blank canvas, how do you make them all not similar? And that's something that with Gears 5 we struck out to, like from the very beginning, to make the maps all feel really different.
Yep.
And so that, like, we ended up taking an extra month to make sure that each of these maps feels very differently from each other, as well as feels very different than the 80 or so maps that have come before it in Gears history, right? So, like, every time there's so many, you come up with an idea and you're like, well, what if we made a map that was always just going up, right? Oh, you know, like, I think it's already been made, right? So, like, you know, what if we made a map that was in a stadium? Okay, cool, it's already been made. So, like, finding ideas that are new and fresh keeps getting harder with every map you make. But we really wanted to make sure that there was new ideas like that were distinct from any other maps that had been played before. So in Gears 5, the average time it takes about 4.5 months.
Yeah. Okay, so from iteration 70 of when like the map is ready to be passed on, it clearly goes through like so many different visuals through the artists, like kind of iterating and bringing the map up from like, and they're kind of just replacing all the blocks with, sorry. So like this is like iteration 1001, and maybe like Ryan can talk to more of that. That's obviously all, 1,000 iterations is not me only. Like so many people get their hands on these maps, and like I'm always there to make sure everyone's following my design and making sure no one's breaking my overall design of how my cover reacts, because when they start replacing my blocks with actual art assets, like sometimes they can interfere with like how the player pops up and block their shots. So I'm always keeping a very close eye on all the maps, so just to make sure that nothing's breaking any of my intended gameplay.
Well, also as well, the playtesting doesn't stop at that last iteration we looked at after validation, right? Like there's arted multiplayer playtests that really help you, because visibility is a huge thing, right? Making sure that the art doesn't interfere with readability, with like, as you said, like gameplay elements. It's still an ongoing process for you, right?
Yeah.
So I believe the shutters on the windows were post-validation, weren't they? If I'm correct.
I know those were there in some of the windows. Like these weren't there. Like these shutters weren't there. These ones were, but these ones don't necessarily play a huge role. They just kind of make like kind of frags and whatnot. You have to be more precise with your aim with kind of like projectiles with these kind of shutters. But yeah, these ones came in because we just soon discovered that it's just super unhealthy to have, like I said, like I wanted this house to be an important role and for something to hold where you can impact important fights, but this was kind of just impacting people like when an enemy did take your juice bar, let's say, and then you come up here to front up for these fights, like, and then that guy just looks down at you and lances you down in a second. It just wasn't healthy. So we knew that was like, there's always very subtle design changes even when it starts getting arted. Like we were never scared to like even do changes like when it's arted. Like some maps, like we've done big changes during like all the stages of it getting arted.
Which we haven't talked about those maps yet. So
yeah. So it's just it happened. It happened in years 4 and stuff. So
and then on top of that, obviously, we're not talking about it until later this month. But also, you have to go through playtesting and thinking about Horde as well, right? Like these maps support like Horde as you'd expect, and it's part of the process too, right? So is playtesting on the maps.
Maybe you could show the Navmesh actually.
Yeah. So like, I know I showed you guys all like the cover and stuff, but like there's a lot more that we do as level designers when we are when we are working on. So like all this green pathing, this controls where all the AI goes. So like this is just the normal Navmesh. So this is like for bots, for the bots in MP versus. Like there's like 4 different other Navmesh layers. Like they're for all like the Horde enemies, right? Like all the bosses and stuff. So
can you show one of the other ones?
Yeah, I'll show. So like our job as level designers is to always make sure like these green paths are always connected. So it's something that we just always have to keep a close eye on because all this collision on everything, all these volumes and whatnot, they like kind of break our nav mesh. So we just got to make sure that they always have a clean green path so that makes sure that they can get around the whole map.
Yeah, there's a ton that goes into it.
Yeah, so it's not just for bots, it's actually for all the enemies inside Horde as
Yeah.
well. Any of the human size enemies.
I've got so are the untextured maps the main way these maps are tested? It's the primary. It's probably the chunk of testing, right?
Well, I mean, they're the main way that the level designers test it.
Yeah.
But then the way that, yeah, I would say yes. Yes, like the untextured ones are mainly the way. But we always, once it's arted, we switch to that very quickly because of everything that you guys have said, which is we have to check sight lines and we have to, like, sometimes what we do is identify to the art team, hey, here's a place that you could take a little bit of liberty. Like, the statue in the center doesn't have to be literally the statue that I just grabbed out of the library. It could be a new statue. And so when they do that, like, we've told them where they can take a little bit of license.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll come back and say, we would really like to do this area a little bit differently. Is that okay? And there'll be a little bit of back and forth about how to do that. So that means that even when it goes into like being arted, we really want, like, we still go back and play it quite a bit. But most of the changes happen when it's gray box.
Yeah. And obviously this is the nav mesh for huge enemies.
Yeah.
So the bigger,
So
the
like
bigger guys.
you can see that it starts to tighten up and areas go a little tighter. But like as long as it's connecting, that means they can travel through.
Yeah.
And like for bigger enemies, it's hard, right? Because like we try and cater towards our versus metrics, but always trying to keep Horde in mind.
Yeah.
So it's a really difficult thing to do because when you have like large bosses, you're like, oh, like how is he going to get through this area? But I really like how this door is like this tight for versus. So it's a very hard balance we have to do, but we always just at least try and make sure like for the bigger enemies on our versus map that there's always at least like one golden path for them to at least get around the whole map. If they can't go through a certain area because it's so tight, like we just make sure they'll always have a path to go towards.
And how are map names introduced, someone asked? Is there a certain process?
Is there a process? There's a very, complicated, well-established process that reliably comes up with new names. No, there isn't. It's
some map names stick from the very beginning of
Yeah.
like us level designers calling it what it is in block out, and then some just like, okay, we got to change this. This is kind of not lame in a sense, but we think we can get something shorter and more punchy.
Yeah. So like Versus sort of exists in a different space than the campaign does. It's got this kind of timeless things. We try to find names that don't kind of pigeonhole it too much and that read really like quickly, but also have a little bit of heaviness to them. So like calling it district, like just from an English point of view, like it has that kind of, it's weightier. It has a little bit of crispness in it. So like it could be a district. We don't say it's like the blah district in the blah city in the blah place and whatever, because we want it to have this, it could be kind of anywhere in like the new cog territory. And so the names have to be short, punchy, like have a heavy feel to it, feel like you could say check out district, like gridlock, and have them all kind of feel seamless with each other. And then ultimately, like what the process it'll go through is we'll take the initial ones, some of us will go back and kind of come up with new ones, and then, the LDs will kind of give their input, and then we'll tumble it around until we find one that everybody can live with. And so I think like we've been pretty successful so far, I think.
And then just something based on going back to what we're talking about with the weapons. Weapons on this map, did they change much during development? Was this one that kind of like the role of each weapon kind of started popping pretty quickly, or
no,
was there a lot back and forth?
They for sure changed. Like as you guys saw, I don't know if I didn't really show the what weapons existed in those older like versions of the maps we were looking at, but like this side I think had a torque for a very long time.
It did, yeah.
And then we like I said, like Buzzkill is a great weapon, and it can do a lot of damage in this map with all the ricochet.
Pops. It's one of my favorite places in Gears to use that weapon.
So like that kind of came in really late because what I noticed is some people don't like to carry around heavies, but I wanted to kind of just once again like focus the fight more around these hoses and the cinema. So I kind of like lean towards like people's more fan favorite like weapons over here, but if they like, you should never underestimate the buzzkill in this map. I feel too. So
especially if you can get it up those stairs as well.
Yeah.
Like it's a great way to clear people out of that house.
Yeah.
We always love to make you work a little bit for the power weapon and then to take it from wherever it was given to you to sort of move it a little ways to get the best use out of it. We don't really like to give them to you right exactly where they're best used.
Yeah.
And because like this was a drop shot in the all the Blocko iterations for a long time. Like the reason we went to Frags, I believe for this is like this map is very like it's tight and rifle and like Nasher centric, like Lancer and Nasher, but I think like with drop shots and too many big power weapons like explosives, like you're just gonna interrupt like the intimate like shotgun fights you're having throughout all these like unique areas, right? So I didn't really want to like take away from any of that.
I was seeing someone saying, obviously we've talked about the idea that you know, map builder obviously is not this. I saw some people in chat being like, is this map builder? No, this is Unreal Engine 4 and it's our Gears engine. But as a designer, are you excited to see, obviously initially map builder is all about escape, but we're thinking about in the future it could be versus, etc. Like, is that something that excites you as a designer? And like, is there any tips you give people? Obviously they're not going to have the same level of control. They're going to have some great tiles to work with, but what would you say to them as a designer?
Yeah, I think it's something that's been needing to be done in Gears for a long time. Like I know Gears 1 PC, like people had access to the editor.
Actually, didn't some people get their jobs because of Gears 1 PC, building maps in the editor?
It's possible. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. Like to see what kind of content people out there can create. Like it's going to be something special for sure for the community, and I can't wait to see what people make. Like I think like there's a really good article on a UDK forum. I think it was created by Jim Brown actually. That it's something that I used when I started here, and it's just called like the Gears versus like 101 theory. And he just has like 10 points of like what he thinks makes a great multiplayer map, and those things are kind of like those key aspects I was talking about earlier when I'm starting a map. Like they're aspects that I always keep in mind when starting to design a map. So like I could post that on my Twitter or something. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you can. I'm not trying to get followers, but like I don't know how else to give them the link because I have it bookmarked on my PC upstairs. But if you're interested, like it could be valuable when you are creating some.
And Jim Brown built most of the Gears 1 map lineup, didn't he?
I don't know if we can speak to the number, but like Jim Brown,
he's very involved in it.
Through the whole development, and he was I think the lead on 3. So,
Cool. Yeah. Any questions from the chat? I think this was the last iteration we were showing, obviously, right?
Yeah, this is the last. Like I could show you like more of what I do. Of like, this is like player collision. So not only like are we just placing around cover or anything, like we're actually. Let me just play around it. So all these are actual volumes, and these are what actually act as the collision for your character. So what that means is like these purple volumes will stop the player so you can't like walk through art and whatnot. And then it's the actual art that blocks the meshes, which I can show you here. So this is like the weapon collision. So as you can see, it's like a lot more detail because it literally, like all the collision for weapons is literally like almost following like the one-to-one dimensions of each asset.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more that like goes into like level design 2 other than placing cover and those cover links and like getting it ready for horde. Like we have to make sure all the purple volumes really nicely line up with all the art. So when a player is taking cover, like they take cover on the purple volume, actually. They're not taking cover on the art. So you have to just make sure that they're nice and flush for gameplay and no one's kind of too far off the mesh because the mesh is what blocks the bullets, right? Yeah. So you need like the purple volumes to follow like all the art like pretty accurately.
Cool. Ryan, I've seen a few questions on this, so I'll throw it out to you. Is the team open to subtle changes like removing sightlines or slight modifications to maps as they see gameplay out post-release, or is there any difficulties or challenges with that?
Historically, every time we touch a map, it has to be re-downloaded.
Mm-hmm.
So like if we touch a map, it would be another like gig and a half or whatever for every map.
Mm-hmm.
So in Gears 5, we have better compression and we have better updating tools, so it might not be quite so bad. We were always like we did do it in 4,
Yeah.
like when there were times where we were like, okay, we really need to make this change. It's less about being open to like, hey, would you close this sightline for me, and more about like when we watch hundreds of games being played, we notice that people are either doing something that like is, you know, like hurts the game in some way, or like there isn't quite enough richness in something or whatever. Like we will make a change that's based on obviously feedback to help us find these things, but then we just make sure that we make changes very slowly, because when we play it internally, we have a long time to work on knock-ons.
Yeah.
But if we do it out in like live, then and we make a change, we can't really. It gets really hard to undo that change.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to make sure that it's a really really meaningful thing, and but yeah, we do it when we spot something that really isn't working.
I'm just trying to see if there's any more questions.
Forgot to mention.
Embry, I see your
we just
question
brought
on
this
the
up.
green-blue room that you feel like you've seen some comments saying that they're overpowered and that they're impossible to lock down on a hill. I think
Like I
Garrett
have,
and Ryan kind of talked to
Yeah.
that though.
like I have elaborated on it a bit.
Yeah.
Like I said, like it was something that I really wanted to bring into this map, and I think it's something, and I hear everyone's feedback from the tech test, and I appreciate everyone's feedback, and that's not to say that we're not looking at things that we could do to like do that, but it's something that we keep in mind, and I'm always, like Ryan said, I'm always looking at your guys' feedback.
Why don't you show them how you fixed the grate inside?
Oh yeah, from the tech test.
Yeah.
So like tech test, like my overall intention was not to really allow players to shoot through here, but what I found out from the E-League tournament and tech test, like people were able to find ways to actually shoot through here and get those angles that were not intentional.
Yeah, and shout out to Chaps and a few others who report this.
Yeah.
During tech test.
So like what I did was I kind of tweaked the overall positioning and scale of the meshes, but I think the biggest offender was like how these cover links actually allowed you to pop up.
Can you show them what that looks like?
Sorry,
Like
like what?
just make it so you can pop up so you can see the little target thing on the top.
Oh, like these?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So they used to be able to pop up here. And the thing with like Gears is like, maybe you can talk more to this because it's kind of out of my league, but like when you're standing and not in cover and you're ADSing compared to when you pop up and you're ADSing, there's an elevation change.
So there's
like
two different
slight
things
elevation.
going on there. One is that, like all the gears, like all the characters are using the same skeletons, so that they, like all the hitboxes are all in the same place, so that the LDs can rely on where the eye line is, and that means also where the bullets are coming from, so that when he originally built it, you couldn't really shoot through it because you knew where the characters were. But when you go into cover and it lets you L trigger and bring the gun over, it actually like kind of pushes where the bullets are coming from a little forward, and like sets it at a different height. So between the two of them, people were able to shoot through those slats like super easy. So just by turning off the whatchamacallit, like the ability to L trigger and to go up over cover, players now won't actually be able to as easily shoot through it. Now, if you spray it with an automatic weapon, you'll get like a little bit through, but using like a single shot weapon like a Marksa or a long shot, it'll be much riskier to do that now. So if you just like knock those two things off, like that's fixed.
Yeah.
But little tiny details like that have such a huge impact on gameplay, and that's just this one little dynamic, and then there's the whole rest of the map to figure out, and that's why it takes so long.
Well, it bothers me that even got past me, like, because it's such a little thing, right? And it's like, I guess when I put those grates up, because they did come in late, like I was just standing there ADSing, and I'm like, oh, my shots aren't going through. Like, okay, cool, my fix is done, and I never thought about like actually getting in cover and popping up, and so like I put kind of 2 little fixes in there to kind of fix that idea, fix that problem. I mean, since tech test.
And I mean, obviously, like I'm sure some people in chat are probably wondering, well, why didn't you just put a wall there? Why would you have a like a kind of grate to block bullets and not a wall? Why is it beneficial to you? Sorry, you just got like I'm playing there.
I wanted to show them like how easy it is for me to pop into gameplay. So I just like right-click the ground. I'm like, here I am. I'm playing my map, which is pretty. It's just you always just designing and testing things right away.
Yeah.
But sorry, what was your question?
Oh, the question was just, I'm sure some people in chat are wondering, well, if you didn't want players shooting through that, why not just put a wall there and instead of a grate? Like, what would the reason be behind that?
The original like design was just an open window, right?
Yeah.
So like, like to be honest, I never thought of it as like I want people to shoot out of. I thought about it as visibility. And like I was saying earlier, like when you, as an observant player, you should always see flanks coming.
Yeah.
That's one thing I always truly believe in about Gears design. And so I just knew that's why it's open.
Yeah.
Like that's why you can still see, because
so you can kind of camera visibility, but it's not.
So like when people are here, like they can always just like pop over there, and with their peripherals like on your left, you can see like what's going on over there, like what's going on at the pickup weapon over there, or the home hill, or whatever mode you're playing, right?
Yeah. It's also for the other people looking in, they're able to tell when they see people run by. So that visibility interaction versus shooting interaction, there are 2 different types. And so we think about them as 2 different systems. It's not necessarily that they're always one-to-one. So being able to get reads on the flanks, but also being able to see like when somebody's moving through it, and also providing a little bit of tension for the guy at the window, like shooting out. Without, if that was just a wall, he doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So he doesn't ever have to think about looking at it, which means he stays focused on what he's doing.
Yeah.
With that there, he'll be tempted to go and look every once in a while, which means he takes his eye off the other place.
There's a lot of subtlety that goes into maps, I'm sure. Have we got any last questions, Andius? You see much come in? Oh, okay. You had to call that out. So
Ryan likes it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, referential stuff is great.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see that become a hit over the tech test when people actually started noticing it. I don't think we really saw it pointed out at E-League, actually. I think it was a tech test.
It was a tech test.
Weekend where people actually like took it in. So, Ryan, you get a gold star from that Easter egg, Embry says. What do you feel to see your map being played by pro players?
I think it's great. Like, and that's not to say like I don't always try and design my maps around escalation, but it's always in the back of my mind when I am designing it, and for them to be playing it at such a high level, it's pretty rewarding to see. And like from all their feedback too, like that they give after playing, like let's say the E-League and stuff, it's very valuable. And that's not to say like I cater all that towards only feedback from them, because all you guys posting on Reddit and the forums too, like I'm listening and stuff. It's just very hard to like interact with the community on that kind of stuff, because yeah.
Okay, I think that's everything, to be honest. Have you guys got anything else you'd want to say or show before we wrap this up on District?
I mean, I just want to give again a shout out to like Splash Damage for doing such a great job arting this.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, like I mean, it looks even better in game. Like the running an editor has a bunch of like all the visual effects aren't on. So I think this map turned out phenomenal, both from a gameplay point of view and an art point of view. And like one of the things that we really believe in here, like on the design team, is like collaboration. Like it's an extremely collaborative team. Everybody plays everybody else's maps every day, and like they all sit close to each other, and they're like everybody reviews each other's maps and gives feedback. So to take it from 80% to 100%, like is almost half the work, and that the whole team kind of gets involved to do that. So and it's something that every map goes through to make it sing. So I think like we always want that special essence that every level designer brings, and then really the team and Splash and like this really large group of people like bring you the thing that everybody plays. So I think just want to give some kudos to the whole team.
Garrett, anything you want to add?
No, I just like everything that you like. I'm sure a lot of you played the tech test, but we've been hearing great things, and I'm glad and thankful for everyone's feedback from playing the tech test. And I literally cannot wait for everyone to see our maps in Gears 5.
So speaking of that, I saw some comments for people saying like, oh, in Gears 4 you held a lot of the map reveals until right near the end when we got to the kind of live launch event thing. You will see more maps in the road to release. We don't have any more details showing you right now, but you are going to see more maps. If you saw the Versus Tech Test trailer, you would have got a sneak preview at a couple that we'll be talking about at a later date. So go frame by frame that if you want to kind of get a feel for, I think there's 2 or 3 we haven't revealed in there. But more will be coming. Don't worry, we're not going to keep you kind of in suspense until launch day to find out what our map lineup looks like.
We do want to make it special at launch. Like I think like having it, I know everybody, we want to show them to everybody, and I know everybody wants to see them. I also think that if everybody sees it so far ahead of launch that like at launch they'll just go in, they'll like, oh, these are the maps we've seen.
Yeah, so it's like a timing thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of give and take. Right?
Well, it's also like when we say for even like mode reveals, like everyone's like, oh, can you just talk about it now? It's like we're trying to do everything in the best way possible, so it's exciting for you, but also it's the coolest way to show it off and make sure you get like it's just the best way to reveal things sometimes. So, and obviously next up we have Horde. This month we've entered August. So later this month we'll be talking about Horde 2, so stay tuned for that.
Actually, one question that I want to address is like, are we working now on future maps or still polishing the existing ones? The lead time on the maps, like there's 4.5 months of level design time to get to the gray box point, and then when did we start this map? Like
November,
like a year and a half ago or whatever.
November 2017.
And we kind of are just sort of putting the final polish on it like maybe a few months ago. So like we'll just say it's about 12 months, right? So any map that you play was probably started 12 months ago.
Yep.
So we're working on maps that are 12 months from now.
Cool. Sorry, Andy just looked at me. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Garrett and Ryan, for joining us to give you such an extensive view.
Thank you.
Garrett had to do some custom work to obviously make sure the illustrations are in, so just a huge thanks to him for doing this. We hope you enjoyed it. We're going to try and do more stuff like this, potentially with other areas of the game, who knows, in the future. But thank you very much for watching. We'll be back next Thursday with another Gears Weekly developer stream, and we'll see you then. Take care, everybody.
I could use some help! Don't mind if I do!
Oh yeah! Get your shit correct and pick me up! Shit! We're spotted! Here they come! Watch your back! You want some? Suppressing them! Big gun is ready! Fire! Hell yeah! Let's go! Who's up next? Let's dance! Oh, that shit was awesome!